All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to panel number 4, Creative Innovations and Initiatives to Spread Awareness about BPD. I think we need to get into introductions here a little bit. So I am actually going to turn it over to our panel so they can introduce themselves rather. Today we have Kelly, Caitlin, and Kaylee, and I think we're going to just jump right in with the first question. So that'll give everybody an opportunity to get to know you a little bit. So maybe Caitlin, if you want to start us off and just tell us a little bit about yourself and your BPD journey and how you got involved in your writing.
Okay. I'm Caitlin. I'm 34 years old and I'm from Canada. Just about me in general, I have a dog and I love her very much and she's a big part of my life. I have a husband too, and I do creative arts and writing as well. A little bit about my BPD journey. I was officially diagnosed at age 26, but I believe I've had BPD traits my whole life since I was 4 years old. I think I've had BPD traits. So it's definitely something that I think has always been a part of me and is a part of my identity and my life experience. Although the way it looks now in my life is different in different ways. And I believe I have a meaningful recovery. And for me, that means living with BPD as part of my experience as a person. In terms of my writing, I write for The Mighty, which is an online mental health, and disability community. So much of my writing started there and is through that. I've also self-published 2 books, which are kind of the articles that I wrote for The Mighty, as well as some other poems and things like that are just my own other writing in the books. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Kelly, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm Kelly. I live in Boise, Idaho. I'm a wife, a mother of 2 kids. My background is in psychology, and I have a master's degree in dispute resolution. My BPD story is kind of the same. I exhibited the traits early on, like Caitlin, but I wasn't actually diagnosed till 2017. I was 35. I'm 41 now, but I also exhibited the traits pretty early on. My writing journey started after I had completed my therapy process where I no longer met criteria to have the diagnosis of borderline personality. And so I wanted to write the book with my journal entries from my sessions to invite people in to sit in what the recovery process was like. When I was going through my journey, there was a wonderful resources about what BPD looked like and what it felt like and how it presented itself, and a lot of great workbooks, but there really wasn't a lot of representation on how long and difficult maybe the recovery process can be. And so I wanted to write a memoir to sort of show everybody that it is possible, that it's not easy, it's never linear. And so I self-published my book called Pay Attention to Me. And that's kind of where my journey took me from where I was to my writing my memoir.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Kelly. Kaylee?
I'm Kaylee, and I'm from Bristol, Rhode Island. I am a poet. I've always been a poet since I can remember. So I've probably been a poet longer than I was a borderline. But I use poetry as a way to express myself and heal myself. I also do BPD writing workshops as a wellness workshop for Emotions Matter. Those are really fun. I like to create my prompts to be more positive and to think differently about the experience of BPD. That's really important to me. I was diagnosed with BPD about 10 years ago now, or thereabouts. So maybe when I was like 27 or 28. I'm 37 now. I'm very happily married, and I'm living a very deeply meaningful life, and I use my poetry as a vehicle to express that. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you so much, Kaylee. I'm going to let you rest your voice for a minute, and I'm going to jump over to someone else. And I think we're really curious to hear a little bit about your writing process. What purpose have you written for? We heard a little bit about what you're doing now. Maybe you could give us a little bit of information about, your process and how you write. Caitlin, I don't know if you want to jump in, or Kelly, and we'll give Kaylee a second to catch her breath there.
I don't edit a lot when I write. I kind of just go with it. And so it's imperfect. And I think that I'll write poems and I'll write reflections, but it's all like from my lived experience. And I'm really clear about that when I write, that I'm not saying like, this is how it's going to work for you. And that, do these things and everything will be great. Very much the overall kind of purpose of my writing is to say, this is what's been helpful for me and we're not alone. And a way to kind of, be in solidarity with other people who are experiencing BPD, however that looks for them. So that's kind of my process and why I write, is to be with people who are not with me physically, but I feel like writing is a way to be with and sit with other people wherever they're at in the world.
That's so great. My writing process is a little bit similar. I did a lot of journal entries through my therapy process, just journaling. So ultimately, I used those journals to put together in the book that I did. I also wanted to give kind of like a dual perspective of like my therapist and some of the tools that she gave me. And so the way that I decided to lay out my memoir is there's my journal entries from the session, and then sort of the patient's notes, and it's a conversation between myself and my therapist. I did do a lot of editing because I took all my journal entries through a 3-year process, which were hundreds, and they were all over the place. And they were just a scatter. It was just my thoughts real time. So I did do a lot of editing just because like the flow, but they are in real time. Again, like Elin, my thought processes, I know not everybody experienced the things that I did, but it was just so that you knew that regardless of the magnitude or what coping mechanism, was working for you at the time, that you weren't alone, that we've all experienced in some degree that, we have had to do these things for survival. And so it was more of that kind of thought process, and just putting my journal entries in a book form is what my writing process was.
Thank you.
I don't have a writing process. I write in journals, on graph paper, on engineering, mathematics type paper. I write on the back of receipts. I voice memo myself my own thoughts. I text myself my own poems that I'm in the middle of writing. Something comes to me in the middle of dinner, I write that down. I don't spend a lot of time judging my work. I think it's really important to express yourself and get whatever is coming into your head out on the page or on the computer or in a voice note or whatever medium you choose. And then if you need to, you can go back and edit it later. I look at writing as kind of the same way as being kind to yourself. So like I said, I use my writing as a way to be nice to myself and other people. Thank
I think
you.
we can all agree that writing is such a powerful tool, and I love that none of you really have this very sort of strict view or like a way of writing your own. It's really writing your own feelings and your own thoughts, and that's what I think can sort of help us kind of manage our own lives from time to time, right? People are asking in the Q&A where they can find your writing. So I know lots of people actually came up quite a few times. So I think if it's okay, maybe we could just sort of stop for a second and you all can kind of share where they can find some of your writing if they're interested in reading about what you're talking about today.
Sure. My original journal entries is in a box in my garage. If You can find them there. But Pay Attention to Me, a memoir by Kelly South, is available on all Amazon platforms. So whatever country you generate from, you can just type that in, and that's where you can find my one and only written work thus far.
Awesome, thank you. And others?
For me, I would say most of my writing, the books you can't find anywhere because there's no copies of them. They're not on Amazon. Maybe one day I'll put them there, but they're not there now. So you can't find those. But the articles and the reflections are through the Mighty. So if you had like an account through the Mighty, I think even if you don't, some of them you can still find. But I do write under the name Caitlin M.C. So, or Caitlin MC, I can't remember now. So it's one of those names that I write under. So if you type like the Mighty, or if you have an account with the Mighty, you can access all of the BPD ones there.
Awesome.
And you can find my writing at Cam Poetry 14 on Instagram. It's a private account because I don't want my family members to use it against me. Kidding, sort of. And then I have some poems published in different journals and things like that. I don't have a collection of my own. I don't necessarily plan on writing a collection either.
Awesome. Thank you for putting that in the chat. I was trying to keep up with you, but you're much faster than I am. So let's talk a little bit about the role that your writing played in your recovery journey. I'm going to throw this out to everybody. So whoever wants to start us off, feel free. Hey, Kelly, I see you smiling, so I think that means you want to start. I don't know.
It's a nerve giggle. The role of the writing process for me was through journal entries. I think, like Haley was talking about, it was my way of being able to write down what I was feeling, so I wasn't keeping it bottled up all the time. I needed to say these things, and I didn't always particularly have a great support system, and so I needed to just get these things out in the open, in the air. And I could also go back and read them and learn from them, like, oh my gosh, this day, like I did that, what, like, and just kind of be able to learn from some of the past things that I did that really helped me moving forward, because I could then sort of just compartmentalize, like, okay, I felt the same way here as I did here. What can we do a little bit different? So it really was getting it out there, and then also being able to reflect back on it. So that helped me just through the therapy process.
I think, can I go? Yeah, okay. I think for me, the role it plays in my recovery and still plays, because I see recovery as kind of like an ongoing thing for life. I think at first it was self-expression when I was kind of writing more personally. But then once I submitted an article to the Mighty, I honestly thought like maybe one person would like say like, oh, thank you. But I had a lot of really positive feedback, and I realized like there was meaning that came through like my suffering, and that was kind of, I think that's been huge for my recovery, actually. I think like out of everything, and I've done a lot of therapy and everything, I think the number one thing that's kind of helped me have a meaningful recovery is being able to create some form of meaning, and being able to see like how my own experiences and story and continual kind of self-reflection could be a moment to connect with another person, again, who I'll never see and don't even know what they look like. So yeah, that's kind of the role it played and still plays in my recovery.
So I've been writing poetry since I was about 6 years old. I use it as a way to describe my overwhelming love for my family members. And I call that, BPD love. Obviously, I think we're all in tune with what that is, that intensity. And then once my life shifted into more suffering and pain, my writing turned towards that. And then once I was on the healing journey, the writing turned into love, poems for myself and self-love and what I wanted deeply to hear from other people. And so there's really been an evolution to my work, and I guess I could say that's where I see recovery is in the kind of ways in which I have expressed myself through poetry or through prose. And then I also host a poetry workshop through Emotions Matter every other month where I encourage people in the community to write poems, share poems. They don't have to ever have had any experience. It's a really beautiful space. It's a really safe space. It's a really inspiring space. And I encourage people to try that out if they have a chance to do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we heard a little bit about the way that your writing has impacted your life, right, in your own recovery journey. Caitlin started to talk a little bit about positive feedback and her ability to sort of connect with other folks through her writing. Curious if you'd like to share more about, or any of you would really like to share more about, the responses you've received from the communities that you're part of. What's that been like for you?
So I've had a lot of amazing, like, personal feedback, whether it would be messages or emails. The common thread for me, which was actually the goal of me writing my memoirs, is that people have said I feel seen. I was very transparent in my emotions and the things that I did to cope. And a lot of people have reached out and said, wow, this really, like, I thought I was the only one that did these things or has gone through these things, and I feel seen. And that has just been, I'm so humbled that people have enjoyed my story. It's also, I kind of hate that people have enjoyed my story simply because it's so relatable that, it's kind of this double-edged sword. But really the main feedback has been, wow, I feel seen. And that's all I could have ever hoped for in regards to sharing my personal story.
Anybody else? There's a question from the chat box related to your own writing. So actually, this is for you, Kelly. Did you find it difficult to put your name, or your real name rather, on your memoir? Like, what was that like for you? We have a very engaged audience here, I have to say. They're like writing up a storm in the Q&A box, which is great.
It was not necessarily a difficult decision for me personally because, again, it was my story and I wanted to tell it and be as transparent as possible. I do touch on some things, including, infidelity and things like that. And so for the sake of my husband, I'm still married to him now. We've made it through a lot, but for the sake of my husband and my children, it was one of those things that I did juggle with using a pseudonym versus my real name. Again, not for me. I don't care. It is what it is. I'm that type of person, but I wanted to respect the boundaries of my family members. And so I did use different names and things like that. But everything else is just very authentic.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that and being so open with us. What advice would you all, I want to actually ask all of you this question. What advice would you share to our audience, or anyone really who's considering, writing?
I would say just start. Get your pen, get a piece of paper, use your hand if you want to. just write one sentence or one word. Set a timer. Write about the colors in front of you. Google prompts, writing prompts, just anything that gets you in the flow, gets you going. All it really takes is one person to believe in you, and that can very much be yourself. You can say, I believe enough in myself to write one sentence, and go from there.
It's great advice. I love that you said write on the back of receipts, write anywhere. I actually doodle all the time, and I am notorious for doing that. So I love that I can identify with that totally. Thank you. What do you think, Caitlin? What's your biggest piece of advice, or a couple pieces of advice you could offer folks?
Like, I still write in a journal, and not all of that I put on the Mighty. So I don't share everything that I write. And I'll write things that are not necessarily an article or a poem either. Like I wrote like a kind of like an acrostic poem, I guess you call it a poem, but it was literally just like the word hope. And I wrote like how to define hope, and like H standard for something, O-P-E. And that was just in response to something physical I was experiencing. I was in a lot of pain, and I needed to like find a way to write, and I couldn't sit and write like this. So I just wrote something like that, and I put it on my ceiling, and that was like a way I wrote. So I think that like you can write without feeling like you need to like create something that, you know, other people are necessarily going to see. So maybe taking that pressure off might be helpful. If you do want to write and share it, and you are sensitive to rejection, like I am, then it might just be something to cope ahead with. So to know that if you are going to the Mighty, to kind of have a plan for yourself if maybe it doesn't get chosen to be published. Like I can tell you, like I've had many articles published with the Mighty, but I've submitted some that haven't been published, and I still feel like awful when that happens, even though like it could be like for every 5 there's one that doesn't, and I still like I focus on that one. So I think that like if you are sensitive to rejection, then maybe just knowing that about yourself, and thinking through how to cope ahead if you're going to share it with someone else or have it published.
Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin. Callie, what do you think?
When I started writing, I wrote for myself. There was no sort of premeditated plan to like do, you know, write a book or publish or anything like that. So I would say, first of all, just write it for yourself. Write it for, you know, or, you know, maybe close to people. If you do decide that you want to share, again, like Caitlin said in your story, rejection is it's a real big part of it, especially on such bigger platforms. People leave reviews, people, you know, do those things. There's so many beautiful ways these days to get your work out there. You can self-publish, you can, you know, create your own, you know, things like that. But you're still going to, you know, have some people that just don't love what you wrote or don't feel the same way. So definitely preparing yourself for that is super, super key. Caitlin, thank you for mentioning that. So I think we don't talk about it enough. Like, you know, we are putting ourselves out there to share our work, and although we love to touch everybody, it sometimes just doesn't. And so I think that's important. But really just start writing for yourself. I never wrote to write a book. I never wrote to make money. I never wrote to do any sort of those things. I wanted to tell my story and hope that it helped people.
So you actually was a perfect segue to my next question, which was around, you know, challenges around publishing. So certainly one of the challenges I think we heard loud and clear is that like that rejection, right? What other challenges or obstacles or hurdles would you say, you know, for those of you that have published, you know, what have you experienced, and how have you used that to kind of make you a little bit stronger and get you through it, and you know, and be successful really?
I use the Amazon platform to create my story. It is getting the book in front of the right people is a challenge, or your writings in front of the right people. Again, rejection is a really big part. Putting too much pressure on yourself, like if it has to meet a certain outline or a certain, you know, space. Marketing is a little bit tough on, you know, so again, don't go into it thinking, oh, you know, I've written it and now that's it. Now, you know, to get it out in front of people can be a challenge. And just kind of, you know, just taking it time. Oh my gosh. I was like, cool, I wrote a book. And then it was like, then it had to go through this process and that process. And it took a long time. So it's a long time. I didn't have to deal with rejection because I didn't, you know, send it out to huge publishing companies. Again, the beauty of now this day and age with technology is you can self-publish on Barnes and Nobles or Amazon or wherever platform that you want. And so I was lucky enough not to have like those, you know, 15 rejection letters or anything like that. But yeah, marketing and time and just is kind of a hurdle at the beginning.
Thank you, Kelly. Anybody else want to jump in and share anything on that one?
I'll say that I'm my own hurdle to publishing because I simply don't take action to get published. I might submit something once a year, twice a year. So I am my greatest barrier, and I'm okay with that presently, and I have been for a very long time. I do self-inquiry, and I do ask myself, when do you think you want to submit? And I submit a couple times a year. So I did submit a couple times this year. I got rejected. Then I got invited back to submit more poems, and I was like, no, I'm okay with that. So really just myself, and it's not about rejection. I just love writing, and I don't really care about where it goes.
Right, but your writing is for you.
Yeah.
That's really powerful, I think, and a great message to send. So we've got a few questions in the Q&A, and I do want to encourage our group to continue to put them in. We're not going to ignore you for much longer, but we will have some time for questions, and there's some really great questions, so keep them coming. But I do want to sort of give you all this incredible gift, which is our panelists are actually going to share some of their own writing with you. So I'm going to give our panelists sort of one last opportunity to dealer's choice, as they say. If you have anything left that we haven't kind of touched on that you felt you wanted to bring up or to share about, this is your chance, because we have about 15-ish, a little less than that, minutes left. And I want to make sure we can hear from you and hear your writing, and then turn it over for questions. So any last sort of or anything you wanted to share? Okay, sounds like we're headed right into reading. I'm going to just do like Hollywood Squares, who's on my screen first. So Kelly, I think that means you're up. You're first on my screen.
Okay.
Do you want to give us a little bit of info about what you're going to read for us, and then get into it?
Sure. So I'm going to be reading about 4 different excerpts from the memoir. Again, it is written in sort of journal notes and patient's notes forms. I'm just going to specifically read about my journal entries. I do want to just go ahead and there are some verbiage, maybe some triggering things, so I just wanted to make that clear before I move forward. And I'm kind of starting in the middle. So yeah, Pay Attention to Me by Kelly South, and we're going to just jump right in here. Session 62, August 15th, 2017. For the record, I've seen Girl Interrupted and Fatal Attraction. I get it, loosely based on real events and a cinematic necessity to create shock factors. Aside from the lack of backstory, narrative, and overwhelming one-sided view of BPD, these are fairly accurate depictions. But why would anyone entertain the idea of having this? Am I exactly what the diagnostic book classifies me as? Maybe, but the pendulum swings the other way. I'm engaging, empathetic, funny, charismatic, and articulate. I'm willing to try new things, often thanks to the unclear self-image portion of the illness. Impulsivity, like overspending? Sure, but it's often on gifts for others. Engaging in risky behaviors? Hell yeah. I would say giving roadhead would fall under that category. Oh, the perks. No one is hating my mental illness during those times. I do have frequent mood swings. I am easily angered, but I'm also brought to my knees from kind gestures. When I love deeply. I remember the small details. I'm the life of the party and can make people feel comfortable easily. There is so much good that comes from having BPD. Maybe if the other side was glorified the way the negative is, others would be less judgmental, and people meeting the criteria would entertain the possibility of having
it. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much. Okay, Kaylee, you're up next.
Ooh, yay. Kelly, that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
I'm reading a poem. I don't have a title for this one. My life began to end in June of 1997. The word cancer was a sharp stop sign, bladed corners cutting my skin. The kitchen didn't collapse. She collapsed in her lime green kitchen. I had this one thought when I graduated 5th grade. It's going to be the best summer ever. I wore a polka dotted black dress to my 5th grade graduation. My proud smile like high beams on a dark winter road. Cancer was the black ice. It wasn't the best summer. I didn't have fun. I learned to play pretend. There wasn't summer sweat or sunblock. There were no sunburns that summer. No ice cream cone to melt me happy. There was no swimming, just the last time. I was pretending to drown so I could understand death. I had to stop pretending, and I surfaced to my parents asking me to give the eulogy. So I put back on my 5th grade graduation dress. Would they say my name right? Heart beating my throat. What if they mispronounced it and I didn't get up on time? What if they said Healy or Katie or Kelly or Callie? What if an adult gave the eulogy instead? But first, the freon from the air conditioning stings my throat. The lilies are how I see death arriving. They say my name right. There is no adult to stand in for me. I stand there and I do not cry. I do not shake. My insides shake. I tell a church full of people all about my 65-year-old dead grandmother. I tell them about the dusty millers and dirt under my nails. I tell them about collecting rainwater. I tell them about her farm neighbors that never locked their doors. I tell them about the book she wrote, read with Kaylee on June 5th, 1997 at 6 p.m. inside. I still have them, broken and worn. I tell them a poem. I tell them I'll love her always, and I have. Thank you.
That was awesome.
Thank you, Callie and Kelly, for your. I really enjoyed that. Thank you so much. I'm just in awe now of that, and now I have to go. So, so I'm just gonna get in the zone for a second. Okay. So mine is a poem as well, and it's in one of the self-published books I wrote. So it's actually not on the Mighty. It's one of the only, you're not going to find it there. But here it is. You are not alone. We are not alone. Breathe with me, dance with me. I reach out and take your hand. No expectation, no race, no place to be but here. I see you. The light in you, the light in me. It may not feel like it now, but we will survive. Love is within us, on us. We wear our name, beloved. We commit to loving ourselves today. And nothing said to us will take this away. Our worth, our dignity, our place. Sometimes scared and alone, we feel this pain, and still we choose to drown out the voices that the judgmental voices both inside of us and out say, not good enough, bad, useless, waste of space. We hear those voices, they are so loud, and we proudly proclaim our beauty, our light, our grace. We exist, we exist. We are warriors and we don't fight. We will others in spite. We soothe ourselves instead. We breathe in, we breathe out. We are like armor, and we are sensitive, like an orchid, exquisitely and wonderfully fragile and complex. We will live our life with these borderline traits. We shine bright, we flourish, dancing together. We are an armor of lights. With willingness, acceptance, curiosity, we feel our emotions and we watch this wave pass gently. We may not always thrive in this rain, but we will survive. We're not abandoned. We dance holding hands together. Brightness in each of us will shine now and forever. Now, forever, now and forever, we are dancing together, 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 breathing and dancing together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. That was, I mean, incredible. Incredible for you to put it all out there for us and let us, really let us get to know you a little bit more through your writing. So thank you for being vulnerable with us today. I appreciate that. I think everyone appreciates that. So I think we've got about 5 minutes left. I'd like to turn it into the Q&A part of the session, if you will. Like I said, we've got some questions in the chat. Here's one that is not specific to any one of you. So I guess this is open for anybody. To what level do you self-disclose in your writing publicly, and how do you think about that process?
I don't self-disclose publicly. Like, I write under a pseudonym. Well, I have my real first name, I'll be fair. Like, it's not a full pseudonym. But I do work in human services in a helping profession. And that's like my paid job, not like writing something I voluntarily do. So it's something I'm very, very careful of. So I don't share that for that reason. And I've met other people that do, and it's a very personal kind of choice to self-disclose or not. For me, where I am and kind of where I'm in my career and job, I don't, because I don't want like clients and stuff like that to find it. So yeah.
Thank you. Others?
I'm very open about it. That's it. It's a very personal decision. I didn't stop and think before I dove, which makes sense when you have BPD. And I don't mind that about myself. So I'm okay with it. And I'm okay with people knowing. And that's that.
Thank you. And Kelly, you started to kind of talk about this a little bit when you were talking about your book. Do you want to just jump in for a minute here and maybe reiterate for folks that may have missed that part?
Yeah, sure. So again, I didn't have a problem really telling my story, but my story involved other people that, didn't particularly want to air out their dirty laundry. It's just not something that they were comfortable with. My spouse, I have children, with the internet and everything, an adult child, she's 20. So I was very conscientious of the effects that might have on them. And so for me personally, I was like, okay, it is what it is. But just for the boundaries of other people that were involved in my personal borderline personality story, pseudonym was an important decision for me because of them.
Okay. What about, this is also not to anyone on the panel specifically, but there's a question around family support and how, if and how your family supported you or do support you through your writing.
My husband is my greatest cheerleader when it comes to my writing. He listens to everything I write. I read it to him, and he's very generous with his listening and his empathy and his encouragement. And then I have a great team of friends that listen to my poems and want to hear my poems, so I might record it and send it to them after I write it. So I'm very blessed and lucky in that regard. My parents and other family members are very practical, and that's just not something they're connected to. And I get my practicality from them, which is awesome. So I can celebrate both sides of those things.
Beautiful. I'm going to actually move us along. I have a few more questions that came in. If any of you use audio voice recording, instead of like physical writing, pen and paper writing. And one that's like, yeah, I see lots of heads nodding. Yeah. Okay. How does engaging with your inner writer's voice help you with living with BPD?
Well, I touched on this before, where when I'm in need of something to make me feel happy or cared for, I will write it to myself. So I will say, Dear Kaylee, and I will write myself a poem. So my writer's voice is very kind to me, and that's, I took care cultivating that ability, and I think everyone should find a writer's voice that is kind to them as well.
Anybody else in the last minute or so want to touch on that?
I sometimes I'll voice record poems, and then listen to them if I kind of need to be reminded of kind of what I'm trying to hope others see. Sometimes we all know, sometimes it's easier to be kind to someone else than to be kind to yourself, and sometimes I that's kind of how I connect with. I can't remember the original question, writer's voice. So that's kind of
with
how
your journey. Yeah.
Yeah. And I still do that. So I'll listen to my own writing as a way to kind of hear the words I need someone else to say to me, even though it's me, it's kind of outside of me. And I find it works. It often helps. So.
Great. Thank you. So Kelly, one last question came in specifically for you, and it's about your book and the writing process. How long was that process from sort of organizing everything to publishing? How long did that take you?
So because they're journal entries of real time, the writing process took 3 years, just because I was sort of journaling my process through the therapy. Once I was able to kind of pick and choose the journal entries, because a lot of my writing, it was a lot of repetitive. It was the same emotions about the same thing, different day. So I kind of just narrowed them down. I wrote and put together the entire memoir. It's short. It's only 100 pages, so it's not like a big, thick book, in about 4 months. And then the platform that I used it was pretty easy to then just format it and upload it and create the cover and things like that. So the whole thing probably took about 6 months.
Oh, okay. Great. Thank you. So we're at the end of our panel presentation for today. I want to take just a minute to thank all of you for joining us and being so engaged in the conversation with us today. I want to specifically thank our panelists, so Caitlin, Kaylee, and Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing everything that you did with us today, especially your writing. Also want to just real quick kind of close this out by sharing the screen again here and letting everyone know that we do invite you to make a donation to support Emotions Matter for BPD Awareness Month. Additionally, we'd love for you to come and walk with us for BPD on Sunday, June 4th in New York City or virtually. And you can follow our Facebook Live feed there for that as well. And more information about how you can get involved is here on your screen. So thanks so much to all of you for joining us. Enjoy the rest of BPDFest.